Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Hello everyone and welcome to Basics Discussion Circle and Meditation. My name is Travis. I facilitate this group. In this class we go over one teaching each month. This month we are on right speech, one factor of the Eightfold Path, the third factor of the Eightfold Path. So that's what we'll be covering tonight. I always like to start, because this is intended to be a discussion-based group, I like to start with going around the room. If we can say our name and just do our name and something that we're grateful for. So my name's Travis. I'm grateful for being able to facilitate this class.
Hi, my name is Roberto. I am grateful for being able to live in San Diego.
I'm Dharma. I'm grateful for. I'm not so sure. A lot of things I'm grateful for. Point one thing.
I'm Jody. I am grateful to be alive.
My name is John. I am grateful for the very wet winter that we had in San Diego.
My name is Ariel. I'm grateful for having a roof over me.
My name is Brendan. I'm grateful for a job that I like.
I'm Dave. I'm grateful for beautiful day outside. My name's Rich, and I'm grateful that I'm here.
I'm Gary. I'm grateful I got back to the class. I've been busy for a while, so hi again.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'm grateful for the little fox I saw running around just before I got.
Thanks. Thank you everyone for sharing. As well, anyone online, if you'd like to leave, there's a live chat. Feel free to chime in at any time in that. And also, if you have any questions, you can leave them there at any time during, ideally, maybe not type them during the meditation, maybe do the meditation, but any other time you can leave them there. And when we get to the question portion, I'll touch on them. So today's kind of a special day. Every day special, but today is actually the 6-year anniversary of the first time I ever led a class here. Yeah. So it was kind of cool to be able to, each year the day shifts by a day of the week, and I've been leading long enough to where it's back on a Thursday. The 11th is back on a Thursday again. So I thought that was kind of cool. I really enjoy leading this class. So it's nice to recognize that. It's nice to celebrate the kind of milestones, however small they may be. So yeah. Typically during any kind of milestone or any kind of anniversary of any kind, what I like to do is a contemplation on impermanence, on the nature of impermanence, which may sound like it dampers the celebration, but I don't mind it. It keeps things real. But tonight, especially since it's the first time I'm back to streaming live, I didn't want to go right into an impermanence and death meditation. So we'll do that next week. So tonight, we'll just do a standard breathing through the body meditation, kind of relaxing bodily tension. And then I'll give a short talk afterwards, and then we'll open up to discussion or questions. Yeah. A few things before we get started. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away or have any mystical magical experiences. It's helpful if you're seated on a chair to have feet flat on the ground, maybe not fully utilizing the backrest. That way you're less likely to fall asleep. The tongue can be pressed up against the roof of the mouth, gently against the back of the teeth, prevents the buildup of saliva, which can be distracting. I like to straighten out the spine, bring the shoulders up and back, and drop them into a really sturdy posture. Throughout the meditation, I'll be giving instructions like breathing in through the eyes or the ears. I'm not suggesting we literally do this, please don't. But it's just a perceptual exercise to spread sensation of breath, which is very much a tension relaxing sensation through the various parts of the body. It's easy enough to say drop the shoulders or soften the forehead, but it's a bit harder to say relax the tension in the center of the chest or in the center of the head. So we use the breath as a proxy to kind of let the body know we would like to relax those areas. That's pretty much it, and we'll go ahead and get started. Closing the eyes, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. Noticing if deep breathing feels good. If it does, you can keep on breathing in this way. If it doesn't, you can switch things up. Maybe even deeper still or more shallow. Heavier or lighter. In long, out short. In short, out long. Just playing around to see what feels best in this moment. This investigation of the breath is really beneficial because it grants direct insight into how the way that we breathe impacts our experience of the present moment. And it's also an opportunity to practice right speech internally. We're thinking about the breath, asking questions about the breath, and adjusting it accordingly. But if it's too involved, you can always just pose the question in the mind. So what kind of breathing would be the most calming or the most energizing? And then simply observe how the breath responds. And once you've found a rhythm and texture of breath that does feel good, you can maintain it. As you focus on this in and out breath, you can notice if there's any element of tension or stress within the process of breathing. Any sense of forcing the breath in or squeezing it out. And see if you can drop that. Allowing breath to flow in, allowing breath to flow out. Dissolving away tension. Maintaining this awareness of breath, we can expand this tension, relaxation up to the forehead and the area around the eyes, and to the shoulders. Breathing in, softening the forehead and the shoulders. Breathing out, keeping them relaxed. Gently guiding this breath awareness down into the abdomen, the area around the stomach. Noticing how the breath feels in this part of the body. Noticing any patterns of tension or tightness in the abdomen. And consciously relaxing them all the way through the in-breath, all the way through the out. If you want, you can even imagine the breath flowing through the tension, dissolving it away. With tension in the stomach, relax, gently guiding awareness up into the center of the chest, and repeating the same process here. Noticing how the breath feels in the chest. Noticing any sense of constriction or tightness there, and consciously relaxing it. If you want, you could even imagine the breath coming in right there at the heart, so you don't have to push or pull it from anywhere else in the body. Breathing in, the breath flows into the heart, soothing the heart. Breathing out, it radiates out, opening the chest. With the chest spacious and relaxed, gently guiding our awareness up one last time into the center of the head. Be very gentle as you focus here, as the nerves of the head tend to be overworked. So there's no need to force anything or push anything, just to allow. As you breathe in, you can imagine the breath coming in not only through the nose, but in through the eyes and the ears, the back of the head, down through the top of the head, gently flowing deep into the brain, soothing mental tension. As you breathe out, you can imagine the breath radiating out in all directions, relaxing the scalp and the forehead and the face. Once the breath energy in the head feels spacious and relaxed, you can imagine it flowing down the nervous system, the entire nervous system, down the arms and out the hands, down the back and through the legs and out the feet, dissolving away any patterns of tension throughout the body. Breathing in, aware of the entire body. Breathing out, soothing the body. Taking a few more good, deep breaths. And then reminding yourself before we open our eyes in a moment that just because the eyes are open and we're engaging in the world again doesn't mean that the mind has to go flowing back out with them. You can still maintain some sense of a body-centered awareness. Some sense of a strong foundation in the moment. And with that thought in mind, you can open the eyes when ready and stretch if needed. As always, I'm interested to hear if anyone would like to share how that experience of meditation was for them. Whether you found it easy, difficult, straightforward, confusing, or whatever you may be sitting with in this moment.
It was easy at the beginning for like the first 15 minutes, and then I started thinking about a friend of mine who's moving to Romano. So I kind of got a little sad towards the end.
I struggle at the end of the day to not get sleepy. In the morning, I can be more peaceful but alert. In the evening, I feel like I kind of want to start falling, you know?
Yeah. It can be tricky, especially with this style of meditation. I have often got the feedback that people find it too soothing to go through the body section by section, relaxing it. But it is a really beneficial practice to develop. And the interesting thing, like how you shared, it was easy for the first 15 minutes. That was, I believe, a full 30, maybe 35-minute meditation. But I think just 30. So for like the first 15 minutes, it was easy. And then you started having distracting thoughts about a friend who's moving. Something that's really interesting that comes up with this style of meditation is as we become more aware of the patterns of tension in the body, different patterns of tension can elicit different emotional responses, or it can be holding certain memories or feelings kind of within the tension. And it's that tension that's kind of like latching them down. And when we go through the body section by section, relaxing tension, it's kind of like we've been holding like foam balls under the water. And when we relax the tension, the foam balls are able to float up to the top. So with this type of practice, a lot of things can come up through consciously relaxing the body. So different patterns of tension, different responses. The thing that's really cool about it too is if we relax a certain pattern of tension in the body and it gives rise to like an intense emotion, that intense emotion is corresponding to a different pattern of tension in the body. So we could relax a more blatant pattern of tension, and then that intense emotion arises because there's less static around a subtler pattern of tension that was already present in the body. So that feeling comes up and it can be really intense. But what's really interesting about this practice is because that feeling is coming up in response to a subtler pattern of tension, if we can learn to recognize these subtler patterns of tension, we can consciously relax them. And then it's kind of like the intense emotion, the footholds that the intense emotion has in the present moment, there's nowhere for it to stand anymore. And it kind of dissolves away on its own. So that's something that's really interesting that can happen with this type of practice, this body scanning. It also allows us to become more aware of our emotions and our feelings. As someone on the spectrum, I kind of have, on the autism spectrum, I kind of have a blindness towards my emotions, and I have for most of my life, not really being able to identify what emotion is what. But this practice for the last 12 years of noticing patterns of tension in the body, sensations throughout the body, and being able to recognize those patterns of tension as the emotions that they are, allowed me to kind of overcome that emotional blindness and recognize what I am feeling in the moment, become more familiar with it, and also become familiar with the ways in which I am feeding it and giving rise to it. Because nothing arises in a vacuum. Everything comes from pre-existing causes and conditions. So, yeah. Would anyone else like to share? Or does anyone have any questions about the meditation?
It's sort of like developing self-awareness as you kind of develop more of that and more aware of your behavior. saying with regard to that?
Yes, it's recognizing that there's an entire dimension of awareness and feeling and emotion that exists within the body, that we go through life on autopilot without really checking in with the body. And sometimes it can be difficult to, for some people, and for myself often, it can be difficult to recognize the difference between two similar emotions in terms of how they feel mentally, of like excitement and anxiety, right? They're both a very energetic mental quality, excitement and anxiety. But if we check in with the body, one of them actually feels pleasant for the body, and one of them feels like torture. So it makes it easier to recognize what I'm feeling. In the same way, if I feel a really intense, pleasant emotion towards someone, the potentials are genuine affection for someone or obsession. And we don't really, without checking in with the body, there's no like surefire method to recognize what that emotion is. Affection in the body feels light, it feels airy, it doesn't necessarily have an agenda. And obsession, everything is tense, everything is clamped down, everything is shrunken. So those are just a few examples of ways in which awareness of body helps this self-awareness of the mind, because the body is the springboard from which the mind kind of fashions itself. It's the raw materials. The body and our experience of the body is the raw materials that the mind uses to fashion a sense of self, to fashion emotions, to fashion beliefs. Does that address your question? So I think I'll talk about the topic. I rarely actually get to the topic sometimes, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So right speech is the third factor of the Eightfold Path. Within the Eightfold Path, right views, right resolves, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So it's the third factor of the path, and it's grouped together as a factor of virtue with right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So the way we speak, the way we act, and the way that we provide for ourselves. And all three aspects of the virtue factors of the path have to do with adopting the principle of non-affliction, of deciding not to cause harm through our actions and becoming more aware of any potential harm we are causing through our actions. Because a good percentage of the harm that we cause throughout our lives is harm that we're unaware that we're causing. There's still a good chunk that we're often aware that we're causing it, or at least we're aware afterwards. But a lot of it is harm that we're not even aware that we're causing because we lack that self-awareness, right? So these factors, these virtue factors, are there as a means of reflection and as a means of having some standards that we can kind of hold ourselves accountable to. Not something to fashion into a club and beat ourselves over the head with, but just something that we can hold ourselves accountable with, that we can use as a tool for reflection, for contemplation. So with right speech, I think I'll read the Buddha's own words and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. A statement endowed with 5 factors is well-spoken, not ill-spoken. It is blameless and unfaulted by knowledgeable people. Which 5? It is spoken at the right time. It is spoken in truth. It is spoken affectionately. It is spoken beneficially. And it is spoken with a mind imbued with goodwill. So those qualities kind of are what form right speech, right? So the biggest one of those that I think is tricky can be a sense of the right time and place. But all of them can have their challenges depending on the situation. So are we being honest in our interactions, or are we being deceptive? Are we taking into account the time and place, or are we just we have a thought come up and then we have to execute on that thought, no matter what the time or place is? In what ways are we speaking in a way that's harsh, in a way that causes harm? How much of what we say has no purpose? Is it beneficial? Is what we're saying beneficial, or is it just to fill the air? We're all guilty of that, I'm sure. It's not just me. So these qualities of kind of adopting a quality of non-affliction, adopting a principle of non-affliction, and recognizing the ways in which we can potentially cause harm with our speech. And right speech isn't just how we talk to other people. I kind of touched on it at the beginning of the meditation, but within meditative practice, we're developing right speech as well. We're trying to create a beneficial narrative within the mind. We're trying to change the way that we talk to ourselves. And the most straightforward way to go about that is to take ownership of how we speak to other people, because how we talk to other people, how we interact with other people, informs how we talk to ourselves. And how we talk to ourselves informs how we interact with other people. And how we interact with ourselves, therefore, how we interact with other people. So it's becoming more aware of what we're saying and not just talking for the sake of talking, or talking just for the sake of being liked, or talking just for the sake of being right. It's right speech, but it's not right in the sense of I am right in this situation. It was mentioned, I was talking a little bit before the class, and someone had mentioned that they have a bit of an aversion to the usage of the term right, or at least that's how I interpreted it. And something I'd like to touch on with that is all of those aspects, right views, right intentions, right speech, etc. The right in there doesn't mean that it's objectively right, or that it's morally right, or that it's the only way, or anything like that. What it's referring to is that Buddhist practice has a singular purpose in mind. And that purpose is to free the mind from anger, greed, and ignorance, to liberate the mind from those things. So whenever it uses the context right, right and wrong, or skillful and unskillful, or wholesome and unwholesome, or whatever other dichotomies are presented, it's with that intention in mind. Is this something that is a correct way of looking at this if my end goal is freeing the mind? If my end goal is alleviating my own suffering? Is this something that will lead to that, or something that will lead away from that? So that's what's meant by right in that context. The Buddha also defines wrong speech. With most of the virtue factors, when he actually goes through, when he lists the Eightfold Path all at once, all of the virtue factors are actually defined by what not to do, which I enjoy. It's easy to have a concise list of things that maybe aren't the best idea if we want to free the mind. So the 4 types of wrong speech are lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, and idle chatter. Lying is speaking, each of them are defined by the intention behind them. Lying is speaking with the intent to deceive. Divisive speech is speaking with the intent to divide friendships or break people apart. Abusive speech is speaking with the intention to harm. And then idle chatter is speaking without any clear intention at all. So even if maybe it might be difficult to practice wholesome speech, we could at least practice avoiding wrong speech. And of those, I think the hardest one for people to wrestle with, it's easy enough to say, okay, well, I'm not going to say things to so-and-so to make them have a bad opinion of so-and-so, or I'm not going to speak divisively. I'm going to try my best to not lose my temper and speak harshly to anyone. But I think those two are the easiest, where idle chatter sometimes feels like it's the polite thing to do, good old social grease in a conversation. And then lying, for many people, lying feels like avoiding or abstaining from lying feels impossible to do. Because, well, what about little white lies? What about those? Those are probably fine, right? The Buddha isn't suggesting that. The Buddha is suggesting that if we want to see the nature of our mind, see the nature of the way that we're causing pain and suffering upon ourselves, the very first step to seeing that truth is by being truthful. Now, that maybe kind of sucks, but the only way that we're going to be able to see the ways in which we cause suffering for ourselves is if we stop lying to ourselves. And the only way to stop lying to ourselves is to stop lying in general. Now, the Buddha isn't saying to just constantly speak our mind all the time without any regard for the pain that it might cause others. Remember, there's that initial bit that I read there. We should always be honest. We should always be truthful, but we should also refrain from saying things that cause harm, except in the rare occurrence where that harshness would actually be beneficial for someone. But that takes a degree of wisdom to know when that is necessary. So we're trying to be honest, we're trying to be truthful, but we're also trying not to cause harm with our words. And that can be difficult if a lot of our thoughts are imbued with anger or hatred or any other number of unpleasant mental qualities. And that's why right speech is coming after right view and right intentions. We're working on developing the correct view for the sake of liberation. And we're working on removing or no longer resolving on ill will, harmfulness, and sensory obsessions. If we can replace those with positive resolves, it's a lot easier to be honest because we're not operating from kind of crappy intentions to start with. What that looks like in practice, what honesty looks like in practice, sometimes is we can be honest with people and then we can, you can have various degrees of skillfulness with it. How it looks for me, because I'm not necessarily very eloquent with my words in a social setting, it is simply a statement of, I would rather not talk about that. I'd rather not answer that question. And just the recognition, if the person that you're interacting understands that you're trying to live truthfully, and you don't want to say something harmful, but you also don't want to have to lie. That simple recognition of, I'd rather not talk about that right now. Let's talk about this instead, is one way to get around that. One way to not have to lie. But it can be a bit uncomfortable, especially if it's your first time establishing boundaries in social communication like that. It's all too often easy to lie to maintain the peace, to be the peacekeeper, right? But honesty in practice is really beautiful. The more honest that we are with others, the more honest we become with ourselves, and the more clearly we're able to see all the ways that we've been lying to ourselves for so many years, all the limiting beliefs that we've been holding about ourselves for so many years, so many things we hold on to that just simply aren't true, but we hold on to them anyway because someone told us them when we were 5 and they got ingrained in the mind, as one example. So that's it. I talked quite a bit longer than I normally do. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share on that? Anything it brought up for you?
I wonder how you reconcile refraining from idle chatter when, if that idle chatter is infused with the intention of making someone feel like they belong, and speaking with affection. Personally, I'm fine not speaking idly, but I notice other people around me might feel a little like some ice needs to be broken, And so sometimes I feel just as a, effort to make everyone feel safe, I kind of just talk about. I mean, it's not nothing, it's like, oh, what are you doing, things that, I don't know, I guess, what are the parameters of what is considered idle chatter,
I think there's definitely, at least for me, a distinction between that, because you said with the intention of
Right.
allowing someone to feel accepted or included. So then there is a clear intention with that speech. The issue comes when we're speaking because we don't like the silence.
Right.
If our intention is just that the silence is uncomfortable, I need to say something, and then we just go on and on and on to fill the air. That's what I would consider idle chatter.
So I thought idle chatter, I can't say it, idle chatter was gossip, but the divisive is gossip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can take these practices to any degree of intensity. There's actually one teacher that said, talking about anyone when they're not there is gossip.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. I don't take it to that much of an extreme because it's really inconvenient. But definitely I hold, no lying is also one of the precepts, one of kind of Buddhist moral code. And it's the only one that I'm consistently good about. I practice the other ones and I try my best at them, but the no lying is the one that I'm the most consistent with. Because one thing that's super cool about when you stop lying, if you stop lying for an extended period of time, you start to really suck at it, and then it becomes hard to start again. So that's a little benefit of it. Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? We have time for one more.
Yeah, because if you don't lie, it's easier to keep track of information. Sorry, when you're talking about the lie, generally I agree with the intents and premise and everything. But I have a tendency to play devil's advocate and come up with scenarios that and I think this may have actually come up before, by the way. I assume there's a pecking order in terms of like, if you're helping save a life by lying, then save the life. Like, Nazi Germany, if you're hiding people in your attic, like, you might not want to tell the truth to the officers in that case. You might want to lie.
So you immediately went straight to Nazi Germany, but as an example, it just placed a nice little landmine for me right there.
That's the best analogy. I'm just like, there's no argument.
So there's very few situations like that.
Yes.
The problem is we can dramatize any situation to that, right? I mean, you literally just did, but we can dramatize any situation or play devil's advocate or argue for the sake of anything. Like, well, if I didn't lie there, this would have been uncomfortable, and then the world would have ended. To an extent, I won't get into specifics. But this quality of honesty, of the forms of right speech, truthfulness is the only one that the Buddha made a precept. It's the only one that the Buddha stated should not be broken in any case, under any situation. And just because you don't lie doesn't mean that you have to tell the truth. That's a bit of a distinction there. And what I mean by that is you don't just have to like willingly vomit up everything all the time just because you're being honest. Because being honest isn't just like, oh, you look terrible in that shirt. There's not really any benefit to that. So we don't have to say it. In your specific situation, it's a little bit trickier, of course, but thankfully right now we don't have to worry about that. So this quality of truthfulness is important because it's a quality of integrity and it's a quality of character. By being honest with ourselves and honest with others, we build trust between others, we foster beautiful connections with others, and we allow the mind to be seen more clearly. So one example that can be given is if someone asks you something, and I kind of touched on it. If someone asks you something and you know for a fact that the truth in that situation would give rise to anger or greed or aversion or some kind of obsessiveness, then you wouldn't want to just straightforward tell the truth in that situation. It doesn't mean that you would lie, but it means that you would use redirection or some other method of turning the conversation away from that topic. Doesn't work in your example, I know. But,
I just got a flash to Obi-Wan Kenobi.
yes, yeah.
Although he was lying.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I'll say on that because we're also at time. But yeah. So with that, and we can talk more afterwards if you want. I know you're like eager to debate. So,
I'm good.
okay. So we'll go ahead and close with the dedication of merit, and then we have a few announcements. For those of you watching online, there is a study guide in the description box below, a link to a Google Doc. You can print it out or just read it as is on right speech. For those of you in the room, I dropped the ball on printing them out. I'll have them next week. So feel free to check that out. Yeah, so we'll close with the dedication of merit. If comfortable, please join palms. May any merit gained from tonight's meditation and discussion be dedicated to all those who suffer at this time. May all beings in all directions, without limit or exception, be healthy, safe, joyful, and at ease. May we all be healthy, safe, joyful, and at ease. Metta karuna mudita peka sangha tea cheta sa chaturisam bharatva viharati samamudaro bhavena sammadhammaro bhavena sammasangharo bhavena sote hantu nirantaram.